Hey, and welcome to another Ask GSG. It's Nick and Chris here again, answering your questions in Cinema 4D.
Yeah,
or
live.
After Effects.
We're making this up as we go.
Yeah, let's see what we're working on here. We got some good ones today. This one came from Jake. Jake linked to this
This one.
reel. This reel is by Raul Paulette. The whole reel is pretty cool. He's referencing this piece in particular. There's a little green glowy piece. So let's rewind it here.
It's pretty quick.
And it's kind of a it kind of has a flame thing. The reason I originally was like, well, let's get like an emitter going, Chris, was because I think there's a lot of upward movement in it.
Definitely.
I guess you could do that with noise.
Yep, we are going to do that.
We've talked very briefly about a couple ways to approach this that we should keep talking about. But, you know, I was thinking maybe it's X particles. We could like skin some X particles. But Chris says he's got a cool way. It might not be exact, but we can get this kind of glowy effect with refraction, with some 3D noise, some spheres. What else?
Volumetric noise.
Volumetric noise.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this typical tag team style. Chris is going to do the real work and make this thing animate, move around, and then I'm going to try to grab it and do some of these
Make it pretty.
do some of these more lighting effects and stuff. So take it away, buddy.
All right, let's do this. There are a lot of potential different ways of approaching this, and if we were really trying to analyze, like maybe this is an emitter or a series of spheres that are disappearing quickly. Like if we look at the way they fall off, sorry, hard to control Vimeo. They seem to go up and kind of they're growing and moving upward, and they seem to fade out as they go up. Like so, it could be a series of these like quickly cycling through each other. We might be able to. I mean, maybe we'll do that part. Maybe not. But let's jump into cinema and start tinkering around a little bit. There's two different main aspects I want to look at. One, we're going to get our sphere, and we're going to be probably. I don't know. I always feel like going to icosahedron because you get the nice even subdivisions. But triangles tend to be bad to render. But we'll just see how this goes. We always give it a bunch of subdivisions. All right, so the most important part for my purposes here is going to be the movement we're getting out of this. We're going to want to be getting some real-time feedback back from this. So we're going to view this via a displacer. But I like putting my material as a separate material, not inside the displacer. We just have more kind of global control over it this way. So I'm going to turn on the displacement channel, and we're going to do all of our noises in here, and I'm going to make a layer shader right away because we're going to be doing multiple layers here. Now what's important to note is in order to get the displacer working, we need to turn on displacement and actually have some strength, but we give it a height of 0, and now we're going to be able to reference it pretty well. So now inside the layer shader, I can make a noise, and just by, we're going to be changing that a ton, but now let's make sure our displacer is actually giving us some feedback by going to the displacer, which is already a shadow sphere, go to shading, change it to the displacement channel, dragging the tag that we're referencing in, and then we're going to start seeing the displacement here. So we're going to want to probably have this cranked up pretty high. We're seeing a lot of potential random variation in the final there. So I'm not sure where we'll land exactly. We're also going to need a lot more geometry here. Like this, that's not very many segments, so we're going to crank this up significantly. That looks pretty good. We don't actually need to see those lines. They could end up being a distraction, so I'm going to turn those back off again. Then we can go to our noise and scale it up to a size in which we'll actually start seeing some of the smoothness here. So, one of the primary things is we're getting a very good feel of upward motion in our reference here. And we can actually get that really easily in our noise by using our movement. So we've got, I think positive is going to work here. And you want to use really tiny numbers. But if we turn on a speed of 1% and a movement of 1%, it should be pretty slow, but it's always faster than you think it will be. And right away, you see, and I thought it might do this, it's going backwards. It's going down instead of up, at least as far as I can tell. Let's crank this up a little more. Now you can really feel the downward movement, so obviously this is backwards. So we have to have our movement be -5, or our speed might be able to be -1. Either one doesn't matter. Now we're moving up pretty quick. Now, I think in the motion, it is pretty like super fast and chaotic. When we're looking at this, like it's pretty quick. Maybe 3. So this is our upward kind of movement, but then we can also get our regular animation speed. So if we set that to, we don't want to go higher than this number, but if I set this to something like 3, we're getting a lot of just random noise movement, but we still get that upward feel without it just passing through. Yep. If we make that number significantly higher than this, we're going to start losing our upward movement. So we don't want this number to be higher than that one. So 3 actually felt pretty good there for getting some movement out of that. Now, honestly, a lot of the look of this is just going to come from some really simple, like Fresnels, maybe a physical inverted Fresnel. They did green. Let's do orange. I like doing orange. In the transparency, we can turn off the color. This isn't going to refresh as long as I'm hitting play. And the Fresnel takes that over, so I have to set that to multiply. Or possibly screen. Or you don't have screen there. I guess we change the color in here?
I think, Chris, what we should do is make this more of a pure refracting piece, and then use lights and geometry, like lit geometry, to get the glows and stuff.
Okay.
That's my theory on looking at the original, is that it's not being colored internally.
Sure.
Is that it's actually coming from
you want to proper light the outside. Okay. Then we'll just keep this white. I have no idea on any of these numbers. Like water is 1.33. But here's where things are going to get a little bit challenging and weird. Like here, we're seeing refraction, but then I feel like there's also transparent areas that aren't refracted. And I'm not sure how well we can get that. All we can do is try. And I'm going to try and get that by stealing this layer out from our displacement and also putting it in our alpha. When you combine alphas and transparencies, things can get a little bit weird. Now, an important thing is if you're going to use a layer shader inside of an alpha, you have to turn off image alpha. And it's going to be hard to tell what we're looking at all in here. So I'm going to really crank the contrast here so we can determine if this is doing anything. So let's see. I'm going to... Which one's the transparent? Okay, as I pull this down and we get darker and darker, you see we're getting less and less that we're actually seeing. So it should be making large portions of this invisible, which is, I think, in a large way what we're going to be seeing here. Like we get this really nice refraction in some parts, but then it just kind of fades away and it doesn't seem to be doing much. And that's going to give us a lot of the kind of crazy volume. I'm going to make a floor just so that there's something to refract. So that could go a long way there. Now, there's a couple different parts, kind of two different parts in isolation. I just think they're fun parts to talk about in noise. We just did the primary one, which is that our noise is being animated upward constantly. And now, obviously, if we look at our reference, this is... this isn't getting displaced that much. We're displacing quite a bit. I thought that having a high number cranked up on the displacer was going to be good because we could kind of scale our object up with it. But I don't think we're going to do it that way. We'll do our scaling via an emitter or a MoGraph cloner. So that's actually pretty much as far as I would go on that. As a completely separate issue, which could get layered onto all of this, I'm actually going to turn off our sphere and our displacer, and I'm going to make a light. And this is a technique I don't get to talk about very often. I think it's really cool. And I just don't know where to ever put it. But in this kind of abstract effect, I think it's a cool thing to talk about. Now, we might not end up using this at all, but let's just play with it a little bit. I'm going to, in this new light, I turned off the sphere and the displacer. In this new light, we're going to make it volumetric, and we're going to shrink that guy down a little bit until we're about the scale we've been looking at. And we need to go to our visibility, and I'm actually going to turn off our fall off. And let's make a new material and see what we're actually looking at here, because these can get really fun. I'm actually going to use transparency instead of alpha, because then we can colorize it, which is cool. And like I said, we might not end up using this at all, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a noise, and we know 500 was about a good scale. And I'm actually going to throw this into a colorizer, and in this colorizer, I'm going to make this go from black to white back to black, which might be backwards, but might be correct. So now I've done that. We have a 3D noise that is now being pinched into this little thin stream where you can see these sticking out there. And now if I take this material and I apply it to our light, we might have to change a couple different settings, But right away, you're going to see that we're getting a really cool volume fog. And this is actually accurate. This isn't happening on the surface. It's actually happening throughout the entire volume of the light. I'm going to turn our fall off back on there, and you see why I turned it off. And I guess we don't need the floor for this part. You see we actually have a volume of this noise. We could actually rotate around this and see that. And I set this noise to 500, but we can actually go back into this one, and I can steal this noise. It's the exact same one. And now we know it's moving upward and moving quickly and all those details. So I can paste that in here, and we don't need the cranked up contrast. Oops. So there we go. Now that would be moving kind of quickly. The unfortunate part is we can't get any feedback unless we actually render it out. And a couple other things I want to note is, I guess we could crank up the contrast, and you're going to start getting these sharper lines. But you're going to see that we're getting like some bad artifacting in here, and that is primarily because of the single setting inside your light, inside visibility, which is sample distance. And you actually want this to be the smaller. The smaller it is, the more detailed it is. Of course, the longer it's going to take to render. But now, as soon as I did that, you see it takes longer to render, but we get this really beautiful wispy look. And, think about all the different ways you might be able to combine that with all of our different types of noises. Like we turn on a single different type of noise, and we're going to get a completely different cloud and effect. So this might be the kind of cool thing to layer on top of the sphere, but I don't know that that's necessary. Kind of on the side, but another potential way of approaching this entire thing. Okay, cool. Now I've done that. Oh, and you can also have colors in there, which is super cool. I'm going to just turn the light off, and let's continue on the previous path we were on. And let's kind of try and get this looking like it's emitting, because I think that is kind of a good detail that it was doing. I'm going to do an emitter. It's going to behave like an emitter, but it's going to actually be MoGraph. And I like doing this because you get a lot of control. So what I'm going to do is actually create a straight spline. And we can do that via a helix or via a MoSpline. Let's try MoSpline because so rarely do you get to use those. So here's a MoSpline, and I'm going to tell that MoSpline to angle up. Nope, this one. There. If I rotate this up 90 degrees, now we have a straight spline going straight up. Cool. Really straightforward. So now I'm going to take our happy little sphere. I'm going to make a cloner. I'm going to throw that into the clone. I'm going to take the sphere, put in the cloner, and now we are going to clone this onto an object. The object will be the MoSpline. Now, the reason for doing this is we can make this begin to kind of behave a little bit like an emitter by using the rate. So as we increase a rate here, I should be able to hit play, and I guess we might have to shrink these down a bit or make our line a little bit bigger. Let's see. I'm going to turn off the displacer for a second so you can see what's actually going on, because we actually need this to be pretty big to emulate what we were seeing. And as I increase the rate, you can see that this is like traveling upward. And what's interesting is it cycles around, at least as long as loop is on. So the sphere that goes out the top actually cycles back around again and goes to the beginning. I can show this really well if we were to shrink this down to like a smaller size. There, now you can actually see it's traveling upward. But it's so big that we're kind of losing that. But that's fine. So now we can use all of our MoGraph effectors to actually affect how this is changing over time. So I can use a plane effector. Let's use a good old plane effector. I'm going to turn fall off to linear. I'm going to give it a full fall off. I want this to be facing on the Y orientation. I can scale it way up. And I don't know if I actually applied this to the cloner. I did not, so I'm going to drag it in there. And now, what do we want this to do? As it moves upward, I want it to scale to be larger. So I'm going to do a uniform scale and tell it to be bigger. Obviously, we're backwards here. I could invert it so it's actually smaller down there. I think both actually work pretty well. So that should be working pretty well. Now it turns into how do the actually, and now see, I intentionally made the MoSpline pretty long so that we could see it, but for the most part, these are going to be really, really on top of each other. And our scale, which I guess we shouldn't invert, we should have go up and just invert our fall off, which should be Y minus. It's going to get bigger as we go up. In our reference material, like these get quite large compared to their original scale. So I almost feel like we should, well, we don't want to scale down the original sphere because that'll change our noise. So I'm going to go to our cloner, and we could maybe start these off to be significantly smaller, like 0.5. And now our plane effector is going to tell them to scale way up. Now, if we actually have the scale up enough, and not travel too far up this MO spline, then it's going to kind of travel upward. It should travel upward, but never stop encompassing the previous ones. How big do we? I guess we actually have to get pretty dang big for that effect. So there we go. Now they're all layered up. We have to tell this how many clones, which is probably don't need that many. It's going to really kill our render times with the refraction. And now we can go back and drag our material onto the sphere. And now we're going to start getting these layering up on top of each other. Now, there might be one more important thing to note is right now, that's the exact same sphere getting copied over and over again. So you're seeing the exact same refraction happen on all of them. But if we go into our alpha, unfortunately, you have to do this in both channels, but if we go into our alpha and we change our noise not to be the space, not to be texture, but to be based on the world, I think this will work. We'll do this in displacement as well. Then this is like a global noise. It's locked in position. So if this works, I should be able to hit render, and now it's actually growing and passing through noise. So they're not all identical copies of each other. So now it's really just going to turn into how do we layer these up and make it look good. I think our scale feels a little different. So I'm going to turn off our alpha, and let's go to our displacement, and actually let's displace this guy more right here. We'll push that out, get a little more layers of refraction going. You really lose the effect without the alpha. The alpha is going a long way. It's so rare you get to combine alpha and transparency. And I guess we have a lot of decisions to make here as well. Like how soft or harsh should these transitions be? Like right now, we can pull this way back, and now we're not seeing very much of the outside, but it's pretty harsh in contrast. Or we could pull it back, and we're going to more smoothly transition between them, but we'll see like they kind of layer up more, so it's kind of a tough call to make there. I feel like maybe pretty high contrast, and we'll increase the noise scale even more, so we can kind of feel the individual parts. There we go. That looks pretty good. So yeah, that might be the basics of kind of how far I can go with this. I mean, it's going to be, we just have to do a quick render test, I guess, to see if the motion feels like it's doing anything like we want it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and render those frames. Everything's kind of default. I'll drop that down to 400. And it's going to render from this view. And I might just make a super quick crappy light so it's actually catching highlights a little better. The inside will catch. Render. Forward, I guess. Light. Oop, no, move there. I accidentally copied it. Yeah, everything's so transparent, we're kind of losing the light. That's fine. It can be dim just for this quick motion test. So I'm going to say go. And let's see how it feels after a couple frames. We don't have to wait too long because it's going to cycle. I mean, it will never repeat, but we're going to kind of get the idea of it after a very few frames. So we are still getting the upward motion. Like even in these stills, you can feel it traveling upward. So that's good. Let's see if we got anything.
Oh,
that's
nice.
not too bad. Not too bad. We're going to get the refraction layering on top of each other. It can really hit your render times potentially. I feel like it's got to move a little faster. Like now that I see it, like it feels very controlled. We have two different things we could do. We could increase our rate here so that the individual parts are flying upward quicker. And we can start doing it. And in addition, we could do that. And we can say how much is the movement speed happening here. And I feel like we can probably go up a little bit higher. Now we can keep in mind that we can have our displacement and our alpha. They don't have to be identical. Like we want them to kind of feel the same, so we might want to set like both up to 4 if we're changing one. But they don't actually have to be identical. In fact, along those lines, I kept changing my scale. I'm also going to change my random seed on the alpha so that the displacement and the transparency aren't syncing up with each other, like even kind of accidentally. So there's a couple more frames there. Let's see if that is moving pretty quick. Yeah, it feels pretty good. We can make the noise bigger to get more of a blob. There's a million little things to tweak, but I think it might be time for Nick to start tinkering with it. I'm going to go and save this, and it will be, I don't know what this is called, like a
glass
sphere
flame or
fire.
something.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's all about doing the scene and the reflection and refraction and.
Yeah, this will be fun. I have no clue how this is going to look, actually. Looking at this, I'm thinking it's, looking at this, it looks like it's refracting a lot of, like, glow from below. Like, it looks like this is the light source, and it's kind of being refracted through all this glass and stuff going up. So there could be totally backwards with how it's actually made, but that's kind of what I'm seeing is like some sort of little glow. So let's just start. First of all, where is like the base of this? Like, is there a visual way to see it?
But if you just yank the texture tag, move it down to a different object, then there you go.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with that. So for me, this is kind of like getting cut off by the floor. I think we could do this. Take a cylinder, scale it out, scale it down, and just kind of keep it maybe inside and just straight up put a luminant texture on it. Just see let's start experimenting. Because honestly, with how many tricks Chris has going on these alphas and all this stuff, I don't know what it's going to look like until we hit render. So just by putting some luminance in there, putting this back on the sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing a render, already we're getting that refraction. Okay, so now we're getting this bottom piece, and all of the little refractions are going to come up, and you're going to see we're going to have to like clean up the geometry, like maybe with meta balls or something down the road. But even just there, getting all this stuff refracted through might be a good start right already. The other thing we could do is cheat a little bit and take a plane, and the plane can go in Z, and we could take this back and we could scale it up, and let's scale it up even more. Let's like really blow up the scene here just so it'll catch a lot of refraction. And now on this plane, I want to create a new material. I want to make a luminant gradient. And we're going to come in here and maybe we'll do this thing I've been trying again, which is load preset, and just try to find some cool colors. Even these like sharp edge colors, these greens here, might refract really nice. So now we have all this refraction going on in our material, but we just don't want that visible. So we could turn this to compositing tag, boom, and then go to the compositing tag, seen by camera, no. So now it's not seen by camera, but it's seen by our material. So now what we could do is we could cheat these lines. Like, I want them to be a little bit more random, and I want it to have more contrast. And the way we could do that is just by inserting like totally black layers in here. Really making some kind of abstract stuff. In fact, we could just put like a little sliver right there. We could put some black there. We could put some black at the edge. And now now when we render, it's going to give us these like lines going through it. Now some of this transparency stuff, I want the refraction to be like even more like obvious. So maybe the whole scale is like too big. Maybe these lines are like too perfect. It could just be that we put this on a sphere so that there's no straight lines going on.
You could also increase the index of refraction just to
that could be
super crazy it up too.
But by adding these lines, I'm gonna go back to here. By adding these lines, we're gonna get a lot of control over what those flames look like. So now we can go to our this is the material you said, transparency, and just go like 1.5 or something more. It'll just make it more transparent or more refractive. We're still getting some pretty straight lines there, but we could start to.
Well, I think what's
happening
is the alpha even when we see through the alpha, we're seeing the image perfectly behind. So if we don't see the object at all, we're seeing your perfect object behind it, which I didn't realize would happen. But
so we could actually do this. Seen by transparency, no. Seen by refraction, yes. That might fix it right there.
There you go.
Okay, so now we're getting only refraction in there. We can actually crank these colors back up. There's all experimentation. I've never even tried something like this.
No, we're totally making this up.
But there's some cool stuff we could do. Let's do that again. So now we're getting some color from the bottom, so we can make this like more of a greenish. Right? So now we're getting that. And now it's all about getting more roundness and more geometry on this thing. So you cranked up the geometry on these spheres, Chris.
A little bit. It's still relatively low.
But I don't think I'll break it if I double it.
No, that should be fine.
Right? So if we go to...
We also throw the whole thing in Hypernerd.
We could also Hypernerd it. That's true. So as we get cleaner, and standard render for transparent objects, just always with anti-aliasing, is pretty awful. So just by going to physical render, now it's obviously going to take a while, but we had a lot of geometry, and we added a lot of coloring and all this stuff. We actually get some really cool things. This is probably seeing too much to the back, and there's like absolutely no glow and any of that stuff going on, right?
There's a couple things, maybe if I can take control real quick. I'm going to change some of these materials. I think we want to make our alpha a little softer, so we get a little bit more of a transition between those.
So it's less hard-edged?
Yeah, less hard-edged, which can go a long way. And I thought of a detail I completely forgot about, and that is right now, as these are growing, they're just going to pop, suddenly disappear from existence, and that is not what we want. And there should be a fancy way of getting rid of that, but it shouldn't be too complicated. And we need to, on top of this, throw a proximal, and the proximal is going to make it so as it extends out, it's also going to become more transparent, which is another absolute number, just like when we set our noise to world. So I actually need to see where the center of our sphere is. So I'm going to drag this null to about the center, and inside our alpha, inside this layer, I'm going to create a proximal as well. So now we're just going to be looking at the proximal. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to do this in a separate channel because it's really hard to tell scale-wise. And we get so much transparency and whatnot, it's really hard to tell. So I'm just going to make a new channel entirely. It's just luminance. It's just our proximal. So now when I apply this material to our spheres, we should be able to very clearly tell what it's doing. And when I hit render, we haven't fed it anything. I'm going to feed this null, which we'll just call the prox. So now it's got a center point, but you see we're not seeing it at all. If I were to take that and move it up to the top area, hopefully we'll start seeing a little bit of a whiteness. So now that's kind of giving us our overall scale. So I can increase that to 300, 400. Okay, now you see it's encompassing our object pretty well.
Nice.
And now I can maybe center that a little bit more. And now what's actually kind of interesting is I want to actually keep shrinking this until we make the object pretty much entirely black again. So we want to find that sweet spot because of, okay, almost there. It might be, yeah, okay, 200. 200 is the number. So what this is saying is it's white in the inner part and it's black on the outer part. So once again, we're kind of basing it off of a volume. And so what that means is I can copy that channel, this little test material did its job, delete it, go back into our refraction, go into our alpha. We don't need that one because we just made a new one. I'm going to paste it in, paste channel. And now I'm going to tell it to multiply. So now it's going to be completely transparent everywhere outside of that circle. So hopefully, as soon as I apply that material again, hopefully this is going to fade out a little bit more on the edges.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Hopefully. It's hard to tell.
Is it making it more transparent, or is it making
it should make it more transparent, but it should fade out overall. I'm gonna decrease my end distance just to see if we're getting anything. Okay, it is. It totally is. I guess it's just a harsh transition between the two. I'm going to set the smooth, and we're going to say 200, but hopefully this is making it fade out over time. It's going to be hard to tell if it's not moving. So, So yeah, I mean that's all I can say about that. So I'll
Sweet.
let you take back over again.
Yeah, so I think at this point we're looking for a balance between seeing through it and seeing like colors. A lot of that has to do with this plane. So let's just see what we have with and without.
Whoa!
Having it being lit just from the bottom is going to give us a more like consistent feel,
Well, that does feel automatically a lot more like the reference.
right? And now that also has a more of a smoothing effect. Now the smoothing stuff, I'm not sure. Like there's a lot going on there where I think it might be a scale of the detail. Like,
Yeah, all of our noises.
This is almost looking more like a water splash. I think if we started cranking up some of these numbers, like I don't want to mess this up, but the displacement,
Yeah,
in
no,
particular.
go in there and double the global scale.
So I think if we go to like 1,000 and just do another render, we're gonna get more spherical, more like liquidy, flamey, and less like splashy.
Yep.
So like boom, right there, we're looking good. On top of that, there's a lot of glow and stuff that is more like cinema or After Effects kind of. But I do like that it's kind of duotone. I like that it's like a little blue and a little green. So, we could add all those things. We could add all those things later. We can also try something like taking the cylinder, moving it down, and just creating a new color for this internal one. So let's just go with like more of a blue for the inside. And again, when we render, we're just going to get different color flames as it refracts different parts of the bottom. The other thing we could do is turn that off in the render.
Yeah, just copy your composite tag.
So our compositing tag, as I add everything. So now it's only just going to be the flames, I guess, and not the bottom piece, which might be what we want. We could add the glow and stuff later, but you're really not seeing the detail as much as you are just seeing like a glow. Right?
Yeah, there could be an actual light down there, like a visible light that could be doing noise as well. I mean, there's so many ways that could layer up. Like in the transparency, if you add like a little bit green in the transparency, like as it looks through more layers, it's going to get more and more green.
So let's add a light as well. Maybe we could start playing with specular. So if we have a light down here and its overall colors got this green going on.
Don't forget, we still got the one I made.
Oh, you have a light here.
Yeah, you can kill that if you
I'll
want.
just turn it off for now. So we have that. We can do a couple things. We can do a visible light. We can deal with all that. But really what I want to deal with is having some sort of specular hit, mainly on the floor, having that there, but also in our material. So our material now has no specular. We just kind of turned it off. But if we added... they changed the order of these things. I always mess it up. But if we just add like a really sharp specular, we might start getting even more of these little hits as it goes up. So now it's really getting in this almost like psychedelic thing, which I think if we start to animate this will give us that. It is already set to render, so I think it will give us this kind of flame effect as it goes up and up and up. So let's make this 100% to clear up our anti-aliasing, stuff like that.
A big point of contrast between this and the reference is the we've got these very hard-edged illuminations down below. Instead of doing like a smooth gradient of some sort where we transition, everything in the other one is very smooth, and this one we got harsh edges.
That's true. This might be, Chris, where we... So looking good as far as the animation goes. I think it's really cool. What Chris is saying is these hard edges. We could fix that by using that plane instead as our light source. And then what I'm imagining is we take this gradient and we put it on the plane instead of having these cylinders hang out. So we could just turn off our cylinders. We can go to our gradient, and we could turn this to a circular gradient and turn off our interpolation, or turn on our interpolation. And now we have soft kind of colors to go by. So, now we could pick these like green colors and bluish colors, and also have black there to also transition between these. and we can kind of go between and make this little like contrasted gradient. Let's just go with that, let's say. But same thing, we can turn it off to the camera, because if we just leave it on there, you're going to see all of it on the bottom. But now we're getting these soft transitions. Even the edge goes off to this hard blue. We can go, before it hits the edge, go all the way to black. And now it's going to transition from that to black instead of seeing the edge of that sphere. So now we're getting these more wispy. That's a good idea, Chris. Now we're getting all more wispy kind of like textures just by changing that gradient and all the refraction that went along with it. So same thing. We could just add that. We could add that compositing tag to turn it off to the camera and check again and see how our colors are. And then, adjust the colors as you need to. These colors look pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. Could you do something for me? Can you just make right in the center of that thing, can you make a visible light of some sort? Like just a nice, simple fall off, no illumination, just...
Heck yeah. Shadow, visible light. I'm going to make it a little green for you. I'm going to say volumetric.
Just visible, actually. We don't even need just the shadow. Visible. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking the shadow might kind of flicker a little bit weird, or interesting, but let's just do this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really filling out the form.
Yeah.
Now there's a smooth transition between them, so...
Yeah, you can actually see the differences between the layering. And what I would do, Chris, is put this more like toward the source of the flame.
Yeah, definitely.
But then just dim it. Just like the whole fog thing. Have a fog there, but have it more subtle. That was nice. Good thinking, man. I think we're close. What I would say is look at any geometry at this point. Make sure it's all really clean. We still have a little anti-aliasing issues, but I think for the most part it's looking pretty nice. A lot of this fun stuff might come from After Effects. A lot of the glows and bottom things. You see, it's not perfect. It's exactly, but it's a rough idea of how you go about something like that. I'm going to add actually some really hot colors to this.
Oh, definitely.
Just looking at that to kind of blow it out. So in particular, this center blue is kind of bothering me. I'm going to really crank up this green, get a real hot green going on. Yeah, let's go with
even that whole layer can get multiplied beyond 100%.
Yeah, that's true. Get some extra brightness going on. Go with some add. No.
I think multiply.
I always mess it up. Let's see it again. A lot of that too, Chris, what I like to do is get solid colors out of Cinema, even if they're a little dull, and bring it in After Effects to add all those glows and add all that heat in something like After Effects where we have more control over the glow. Because once it's this bright, we can't go back.
Yeah, it's blown out, yeah.
But I like this so much, I don't want to change it.
I think one tiny thing that would go a long way to matching the other one is maybe if we copy that light and make the fall off pretty tiny but pretty bright and just get that whiteness at the bottom. Like
get the heat going?
Yeah.
All right. So,
but I don't know. That could be an After Effects thing too. But
instead of a point light, let's try making an area light.
I meant purely the visibility of it.
Yeah, but use the area light to kind of crank like a little circle around it to get that heat in the bottom. So that radius
can you get visible lights from area lights?
I'm assuming. I don't actually know. We got to make it visible, right? So here's how we're going to find out. We're going to turn off this cloner. We're going to turn off everything just so it renders. And we're going to go disk. We're going to go to... Oh, it just turns off.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I
mean, we could make there's all sorts of...
The OmniLight might not be right for this, but let's see. You're saying make it like crank it and then shrink this. Shrink down the heat. It'll give us a point, but what I really want is this whole thing. And for that, I think what we're going to do is just build that in After Effects.
Sure.
It's just going to give us more control over all that. as well. It's going to allow us to animate it up and down. It's going to be, allow us to pick the best animation point for all this. So I think we should frame this up and get it into After Effects real quick.
Sure.
So let's go 16 by 9.
I don't know that we're going to be too close to the reference material, but I knew that no matter what we made, it was going to be interesting looking.
Yeah, this looks great, man. I mean, for what this is, let's go output, save. Let's turn on save. That'll help. And then we're going to go to this and go glass. What'd you call this thing? Sphere Fire. And we're going to name it Sphere Fire. 8-bit TIFF for now will be fine. This picture viewer is... Oh, that was running the whole time. Actually, that turned off a lot of stuff. Let's just check, make sure we are where we are. That's looking pretty good. I'm actually going to turn down our physical settings just a bit, just to render a little bit faster. And picture viewer, and what else do we need to do? I think we're ready to save. I'm not sure if it's going to be cropped well or not.
Yeah. I think I just remembered a detail about alphas, or using the alpha channel. I think if you use transparency and alpha can only be on or off. So there is no transition between them. That's why we're still getting these harsh edges.
Gotcha.
You can't transition between them. Now you might be able to do that in like After Effects. You could like render out a separate alpha pass and then be like, okay, now you're just fading out these edges that are also refractive. But I don't think Cinema can do that. We're probably getting really harsh, like on or off as far as the alphas are concerned.
I see what you're saying. It's either, there's no transition on the edge. That's why we keep getting these little tendrils.
Yeah.
I think
which is cool looking, yeah.
But yeah, it's not. His is more a lot like softer, fading between transparency and not. So I think that's centered enough for us to bring it into After Effects. So let's open that up while it's rendering. Literally playing with fire here, folks. I'm going to open it up, and we're going to add a glow. Glow it up. First thing is put the glow on it, and want to spread it out a little bit more and adjust the threshold as much as you want. So you could really bling this out. Remember too, glows in 32-bit always look better. So they're going to blow out more naturally. So without 32-bit, they're not really going to heat up. 32-bit really gives you the ability to to make it look hotter than like the lens can capture, and it really blooms really nicely. And now to get that glow on the bottom that Chris was talking about, we could just grab a new solid, grab like a little piece of green or like color pick or whatever we want to do, right? We could just like, okay, a little bit of green, dude. Little bit. Boom. Then take this, take a pen tool. Actually, we could just take the transparency down. Take the pen tool. We could look at his, be like, it's just like this little rectangle glowing. You don't need to render out any of that. You can just go, boom, 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 boom. All right, so now we got that. Let's feather it, right? Mask feather. Let's add some opacity to it. And the feathering might be too much because it's like kind of affecting where it all is. And now what we could do on this is just glow that. So now we have all the control in the world to like heat this up. We can glow radius. We could adjust this more and turn the intensity down a bit. And now it's all about just getting that mask proper. It's like the shape of it's a little wonky. But now we have that heat on the base that we could turn on and off at will, right? So now the bottom of this can look as hot as we want it to as it renders. Let's extend our composition setting so that we could see more. It's already rendered more frames. We can move out, and it hasn't quite rendered that many frames, but that's good enough. So there we go. And let's do a quick little render there. That looks pretty cool, dude.
Crazy looking.
Yeah, it's that's interesting. So now we got our glows. Here's without it all. We could turn off our glow. We could turn off, all this thing. Let's just look at the original real quick, just to see what we're dealing with. Yo, that's cool.
Crazy looking.
Cool.
Yeah, it's definitely those alpha on or off is giving us a very different effect.
So let's get our glow back on. Bing, bing. Let's not solo it. Let's turn on the glow. There we go. So again, we have all the freedom to like make this bottom piece however we want. We could even make a whole solid that is roughly that color, and just screen it. Like screen some color into the entire scene, and then mask that out. So you could just grab a circle and kind of like give a little more atmosphere to it, and then feather that as well. So really dialing in all these visible kind of glowy things on top of it. So now we have that glow. That's a little much, right? But we could tone it down, hit render again, and see what we got. So what I would do is, this is too close to the bottom. In fact, like the whole thing's a little low. We could take the whole thing and just kind of kick it up. Not with the glow though. This needs to stay down. Oh, the glow is not affecting it. So we could grow bounds. We could do that. But honestly, what I think we'll do is just re-render it a little bit higher, just so we have a little bit more room. Mm-hmm. But that is roughly where it is. So he's got a lot of atmosphere, a lot of like dust and junk around it.
Yeah,
that would help a lot. Honestly, this with some film effects, like a grain effect or something, would help a lot. The default's always like too high for me. But a little bit of grain helps add that detail in, so that's a little obvious, but toning that down will also keep our gradients from getting too hairy. And then you can also pump that glow on and off. So we can kind of pump this glow hotter and colder, like animate these over time to give it more of a flicker. But I think really, that looks cool. It's like you said, Chris, it's not like exactly, but it's a cool effect. There we go. You really want to get cheeky, you can add some like motion blur. So the motion blur is going to give it more of a fluid feel anyway. So I could just put that above the glow and just try like a really high number. So this.
There you go. That goes a long way.
This will give us a lot more of that fluid.
That's helping the harsh alphas, which are bugging me. But I mean, once again, this kind of thing, we're like, oh, the harsh alphas are making it look this particular way because it's not what I was expecting. I don't like it, but it looks cool for what it is already.
Right.
Like those could be good if I didn't have my expectations already. The backup started again.
Oh, ding dong. I don't know how to keep that from going. At least it's trying to help us in backing up. You can play in After Effects, at least I can, getting the final look together, and it's a broken record at this point, but we could...
That's looking crazy.
It's a broken record at this point, but we could take all these color corrections and, like, even go nuts with, like, the blur and, like, get all these really cool effects. We can even take a motion pass out and bring it in here and start to layer these. So what if this is that blurry one, but then there's one on top of it that's not blurred at all, that's then screened onto the one below it and offset, right? So now they're not even matched up. We can like offset this top one, and now that's looking through to the bottom one, but the top one's giving it like more structure. And so now we have like a double flame element here that's all being glowed and all being added onto. Like all these different colors are starting to pop up, like all these weird colors are coming in. Getting into a 32-bit space in After Effects is start compiling glows and grains and all this stuff can really take this render, this literal render we got out of Cinema, which is cool, but it doesn't have all that stuff that we could spend hours in Cinema trying to make these glows and all this. But now we could do all this and replicate it and duplicate it and do all this stuff in here. In fact, one last thing I'll do is scale one of these way up and like just pop it down like 10%. Like this is just going to make our lens look like it's getting hit. Like now Now our lens is like getting some of the distortions. Maybe even that's too much, like real low. And we can also offset this as well. So now we have this bottom one, we have a top one, we have a glow, and now we could add all this atmosphere with just a single render. So pretty cool. I would probably pull some of that glow back
as we kept layering it kept getting more and more and more. I love the blur.
Yeah, the blur helps a lot. I'm going to pull some of these glows back, but tweaks forever. Overall, I think it's pretty cool way to do it. Thanks for the question. Yeah, look at that. All right.
No, not too shabby.
Not bad. Thanks for the question.